Spiritual people sometimes tell people you're doing something wrong. They correct people. I mean, just listen to Srila Prabhupada, our founder, and listen to some of the things he says is very strong. But what's happening is it's not coming from a space of ego. It's not coming from a space of arrogance. It's coming from a space of genuine service to others. So it's said, for example, that a spiritualist's anger is like an ocean. On the surface there are waves, but deep inside it's all calm. Thank you everyone, thank you for being here. Just to say also, like all of you being here, your energy, your presence, it really lifts the atmosphere. So thank you for that. And yeah, we got this a little bit of time. And yeah, sometimes you may just have questions. You have, there could be a few categories of questions. Maybe you have questions about the philosophy, about God, about spiritual teachings, about science, about, you know, the validity of the philosophy, which are very good questions. So if you want to ask anything about that, we can talk about philosophy. I just want to also say there's nothing here you can't ask, like, oh, that's too borderline a question. Like, go for it. We like living on the edge, you know. So you can push it to the edge, don't worry. So you might have a question on philosophy, you might have a question on monastic life, what we do here, why we do this, how we live like this. Maybe that's interesting for you. Maybe you have a question on like contemporary issues, what's going on in the world, what you see in society, how does that relate to like spiritual teaching, so we can talk about that. Maybe you have a question about the movement, the Hare Krishna movement. Maybe you've heard things, seen things, or just experienced things that you want more understanding about. Or maybe you might want to ask a question about spiritual practice. So these are the kind of broad types of questions people usually ask. It might be something completely separate from that, but I'm just giving you a sense of basically you can ask anything. Yeah, so I won't speak, like as in start. I'll let you start, and I'd be happy to hear if you guys want to start with any questions. Anyone has a question? You have a question?
Yes, I
okay.
have some list, but I'll go one by one.
Sure. What's your name, sorry?
Archana Marachi, my name is Pavan.
Pavan, okay, cool.
So yeah, there's a few questions. I've been to Krishna conscious from the past. I mean, like from the past 4 years, I'm just researching on Krishna and trying to do that stuff. But from the past 6 months, I started doing Mala. But from the past 4 years, I was like trying to know more and more. So the thing which I found is like the difficult thing is the balance between spiritual and materialistic life. So if someone want to go towards spirituality, okay, that's good. But what I saw is like in the real world, so you always feel like someone drag you down. Why are you going that way? I might not have some answers as well to tell them why spirituality is the most like much needed for the soul. So it's like the materialistic life is always, you know, stopping spirituality. That's what I've seen. But I want a balance. I want to like get married, have children, but also don't want to leave Krishna. So how to find a balance in that script?
All right, great. Thanks, Pavan. It's easy, just become a monk. Leave it all behind. No. Actually, for most people to live in the world and practice spirituality is not only the most natural thing to do, but it's the most impactful thing to do. We live as monks, we can reach a certain amount of people, but when you're out there in the world functioning in your circles, you can actually do amazing things to bring spirituality to the world. So you need to be out there. It's wonderful. But yeah, the world out there has an influence on you, right? The people you spend time with, the environments you're surrounded by. So there's a few things to consider. The first thing is that before you enter the world every day, If you spend some time, like we do here, doing your own spiritual practice, then what happens is before you emerge in the world, you almost emerge in the world with like a spiritual bubble around you. What happens is you elevate your consciousness in the morning before you emerge in the world. And then what happens is rather than being influenced by the world, you become an influencer of the world. Instead of you going into the firm thinking like, oh my God, this is really dangerous. They see you walking in, they're like, this guy's dangerous. He's powerful, you know? So the first thing I would say is that you are as powerful as how you invest in yourself. So you're rising every day at like 4 or 5 o'clock because you have to, you're on the monk challenge and you can't fail the challenge. But keep it going. Even if it's not 4 o'clock, do 5 o'clock, do 6 o'clock, but utilize that time. And then you'll be protected, you'll be stronger. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, don't look at the opposition that you face out there in a bad way. Opposition makes you stronger. Challenge makes you stronger. Provocation and then tolerating it makes you stronger. In other words, if you want to do weight training and build muscles, there needs to be resistance. So when you lift and there's resistance, but you still lift, you build muscle. So don't see the influence of the world as something that is weakening you, but it's something that's helping you become stronger, because you have to strengthen your willpower. So it's good like that. Like I found in my life when people were like, no, this is rubbish, why are you doing this? You're brainwashed. I was like, this is great. It makes me think deeply. Am I brainwashed? Am I doing the right thing? It forces you to think. And then you realize, yes, I am doing the right thing. So the challenge is good. We need a challenge. Right? So that's the second thing I would say. And the third thing I would say is that eventually you want to get to the point where you don't have a spiritual life and a material life. Everything's spiritual. It's not that when I go into the corporate world and I do my job, that's just the material part of my life. And then on Sunday when I come to the temple and I start chanting, that's the spiritual part of my life. We want to get to the point where you're working in the world, you're doing something, you're utilizing your skills, but what you're doing is you're utilizing all of that in such a way that it contributes to making a spiritual impact. Right? So be an investment banker, but be a spiritual one. Be an entrepreneur, but be a spiritual one. Be a leader, but be a spiritual one. Be a father, but be a spiritual one. And then all of those roles are not material, they're spiritual. And that's how you basically bring it together. So these are some, we could talk the whole time about this, but those are some things.
Yeah, it clearly makes sense. So the important thing I learned is that challenge is good. You can take it halfway now. So
yeah, it's good.
Have to probably build kind of really good resistance, isn't it? So that makes me stronger. Thank you. Thanks for answering this. Thank you so much.
Your name, sorry?
Yashodeep.
Yashodeep?
Yeah, Yashodeep.
Yashodeep. Okay.
My question is it like being a spiritual person, it puts a little more pressure on you to be nice all the time? And, if someone will really make some mistake, it's not like we are not allowed to
like that, yeah.
or correct, or like tell the person like it's not the way of doing it. It has to be done in this way.
Yeah, no.
Don't listen to it, and sometimes it provokes you, and you cross your limit and be a little arrogant. Not for being arrogant, but
to make a change. Done. Yes. See, a devotee, a spiritualist is humble. We say every morning, you may have noticed, one should be more humble than a blade of grass, right? But that humility is a very internal humility. It means that one has no ego. But you can be angry for a purpose without being driven by ego. Therefore, spiritual people sometimes do become angry. Spiritual people sometimes do speak strongly. Spiritual people sometimes tell people you're doing something wrong. They correct people. Just listen to Srila Prabhupada, our founder, and listen to some of the things he says is very strong. But what's happening is it's not coming from a space of ego. It's not coming from a space of arrogance. It's coming from a space of genuine service to others. So it's said, for example, that a spiritualist's anger is like an ocean. On the surface, there are waves, but deep inside, it's all calm. So, when was the last time you became like angry at someone and inside you are completely that spiritual anger?
It's like at home, daughters don't listen, so
you
have to be angry on them.
Yeah, but inside, you shouldn't lose your intelligence, right? Like you be angry for a purpose, for the purpose of correcting them, but inside you shouldn't become overcome by the emotion. Because what happens is if you become overcome inside, then Krishna says in the Gita, Krodhat bhavati sammoha. When you become too angry, then you lose your intelligence. You understand? So it's like a measured type of anger. So it's not that a spiritual person can't be angry, but it's that they don't lose, like in English we say, don't lose the plot. You've heard this? It just means you lose the perspective.
Yeah.
Right? So you shouldn't be like that. Like Nrsingadev is angry, right? You've seen the picture in the temple room? I mean, he's like, it's pretty angry, you know? But it's a controlled anger.
Yeah, but like from the other side of the, like, fine with this, but the people don't understand. They argue with you like, oh, you chant rounds and you are still angry, this and that. And most of the times, like, people who practice spirituality are alone, like, not like with the group. So it's hard for someone to convince others that, okay, this is I'm telling for the right purpose or whatever. But the other guy doesn't take it like that.
Yeah, but we know everyone will understand you, isn't it? It's like... And sometimes people, when they see a spiritual person, they just want to...
Be too nice to them, that's what I'm saying. They expect you like, okay...
They're externally to be very like...
Always right, very decent, and very political, whatever, but be nice. But it doesn't happen like if someone makes mistake, you have to tell them I'm making mistake.
So on the whole, we try, it's nice to be nice.
Okay.
On the whole, it's nice to be, but for a specific purpose, sometimes you have to be. And some people may understand that, some people may not. But you should judge yourself. If I've become angry, have I lost my control? If I have, then it's my mistake. Yeah?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. My name is Sachin.
Sachin.
Just wanted to touch on an earlier point that you made around kind of spiritually grounded entrepreneurs and leaders. How can a leader maintain authority and high standards without creating fear or emotional distance in their team?
So one of our teachers, he says that people worship God on different levels. The lowest level of worshipping God is bhaya, out of fear. Higher than that is when you worship God out of asha, which means material desire. He says higher than that is when you worship God out of duty, kartavya. He says higher than that is when you worship out of prema or love. This is a very versatile model because you can apply it to many things and you can apply it to leadership as well. The lowest type of leader is the leader who draws authority from fear. Higher than that is a leader who draws their authority because of what they can provide to the people who follow them. If you follow me, I'll fulfill all your desires. Higher than that is a leader who's so productive and who's offered so many things that people feel a duty, like an indebtedness, like, yeah, I should, they've done so much for me, I should do something for them. But higher than that is a leader who's so pure, who's so personable, who's so, whose character is so endearing that people just want to follow you. That's real leadership. So real leadership comes from love. Real leadership is about inspiring people. Real leadership is when people follow you not for any extrinsic motivation apart from the fact that they know that if they follow you, everything will flourish in their life, right? So one person once said to me something about leadership which summed it up. He said, a leader is someone who wants you to be better than them. It's finished. And he said, if you ever meet someone who wants you to be better than them, they're a leader, you should follow them. So that's what we call in spiritual circles servant leadership, where the leadership is not so much about what the leader gets out of it, but the leader is simply acting to bring out the best in others. So yeah, that's yeah. So fear is a very, if you lead out of fear, eventually it won't be sustainable. People will revolt. So some thoughts. Anyone else?
Pleasure to meet you, Keshava Swami. My name is Akshay.
Akshay.
I'm going to ask my question with an example. So it's like an everyday life thing. So with my parents, for example, I'm very conscious about their health and their well-being, and it's sometimes when I'm trying to advise them about things they should eat, things they their exercise, they don't tend to listen, and I tend to kind of get very not angry but heated up about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's because I care a lot. So my question to you is when you're sharing your knowledge and your insight and your lessons with everyone, I know you probably care so much, but how do you stay calm and deliver that message so impactfully?
When you really want people to accept it and benefit from it, but sometimes they don't, like that. Well, I think first we look at our own life and realize it took us a lot of time. I didn't hear this once and immediately just, it took me time. And therefore everyone's on a journey. So we realize that knowledge takes time. People are on their own journeys. And people are like plants. They grow in different ways, right? Like some plants, in the first year they shoot up, and other plants for 5 years you can't see anything because they're growing their roots, and then in the 6th year they just go boom. So everyone's spirituality is like a plant. It grows in different ways. And so it's said that spiritual teachers are like gardeners. This analogy is often used. Spiritual teachers are like gardeners because they do the hard work, they're systematic, they do everything within their power, and after all is said and done, they realize we got to rely on something beyond me to make this work. And so the final thing is, I'd say that a spiritual teacher knows that they're not the doer. For example, in Greek philosophy, Socrates, he talks about something called the maieutic method. So for him, knowledge transference was what he called the maieutic method. And the maieutic method basically means midwifery. So he said a teacher is like a midwife. They're not putting anything in. All they're simply doing is delivering what is in that person already and bringing it out. But that person has to be ready. So we're not in the ego that as a teacher I'm giving spiritual teachers have no ego because they realize what I'm giving to people, i.e. the knowledge, didn't come from me, I'm getting it from somewhere else. And the amazing thing is what I'm trying to awaken within the person is already within them. So what is a teacher really? What they're giving is not theirs, and what they're awakening is not theirs. They're just like the middle person. And therefore a spiritual teacher has no ego because they realize actually I'm just an instrument here. And I just have to do my best, and everything else is dependent on what's above me and who's in front of me. And that I can't control. Does that make sense? Yeah. Then you just kind of carry on doing what you're doing, and some people say, don't you guys get frustrated, like 20, 25, 30 years, you're day in speaking to the same like people, the same things again and again and again. But it's not, it's beautiful because, well, I'll just share with you one final verse that Krishna also says in the Gita. Krishna says in a beautiful Sanskrit verse, Manushyanam sahashreshu kashkin yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kam kashkin mam veti tatvata. Krishna says, out of many, many thousands of people, one person may endeavor for spiritual perfection. And out of many thousands of people that endeavor for spiritual perfection, maybe one will get it. So a teacher also realizes, I'm selling diamonds. But who can purchase diamonds? Right? It's very rare. So like that, we just, we go out, we try our best, and some people will take it, some people won't. And that's okay, you know.
Thank you.
Maharaji, just a follow-up question on that. Really good question there. And then actually I've experienced something like that in personal life. So I want that just from Bhagavad Gita. Actually, I found one sloka which I think I learned, like whenever you try and do or tell someone something, just telling is my duty. Whether they change or not is my now duty.
Right.
So that's working for me in the outside world, but in the corporate world, I mean, I work as a senior design engineer. So the problem is, like, for example, for juniors, if you give some work, and if they don't do it,
you're responsible.
Exactly, I'm responsible. So it's not working in work life, and then I don't know how to find the.
No, I think work life is different. Like, of course, you've got a job, and so if people don't do what you're doing, then they have to face the consequences, right? So that's how you have to work in the world. But when we're dealing in spiritual spheres, everything is voluntary. Therefore, even Krishna as a teacher, at the end of the Gita, he gives all this amazing knowledge, and then he kind of looks at Arjuna and says, well, I told you everything. Think about it, analyze it, challenge it, reflect on it, and then do what you want to do. So if Krishna, who's God, can't force, doesn't force, where's the question of us? So the work situation is different. You have to do what you have to do. You're in a job. If you don't play the game, there's consequences. Yeah. As a leader, you enforce that. But in spiritual spheres, we don't do that because it's from the heart. It doesn't work. That's why even it comes back to this point about fear. Like, we don't even incite fear in people because that also is not love. So we wouldn't be the guys on the street telling people, and if you don't follow this, you're gonna go to... Like, we don't go there. Like, because even if someone comes forward and says like, yeah, okay, I better do this, for us it's not a success. Because if you want to do this, you have to do it out of love, not because you're gonna avoid some consequence. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. I think I've got a couple of questions, but just building on the other actress question. Similar situation where I'm trying to look out for people that I care about and love, about health, fitness, especially kind of older Asian parents, as we all probably know. How do we differentiate between inertia and complacency, and the complete opposite, which is a very spiritual view, which is I am not the body? Right, because there's a thin line between that, where my point is still to take care of your health, your body, whilst you're in this material world, and the quality of your life is dependent on that, and the people around you. So how do you differentiate between them, and how do you kind of make that message clear around?
What's the difference between inertia and being truly detached? Like,
yeah,
like
where's the middle ground for still taking care of your health,
yeah,
and well-being?
So see, detachment means I do everything in my control, and then once I've done everything in my control, whatever may happen from there, I accept it. So the detachment comes after the endeavor. Inertia means the detachment comes before the endeavor. I'm detached, whatever everyone wants to do, it's all fine. But have you done anything, by the way? No, I'm detached. It's all fine. So when the detachment comes before the endeavor, it's inertia. it's complacency, it's laziness, it's not God's will. When the detachment comes after the endeavor, then we know, I've done everything I can. After that, like I remember once we had our sannyasi who was in charge of like health for the whole movement. So he came to give a talk to all of us on health. And you know how he started his talk? He said, eat well, exercise well, sleep well, die anyway. That was his talk, man. So his point was that like you do everything you can do, and then you know that ultimately whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but you still do everything like in your so we have to, the body is a gift, right? And the amazing thing is, if you spiritually bypass the body and say, I'm just going to be spiritual, forget about the body, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, forgive the pun. Because actually you'll find that when your health is bad, it's actually very difficult to do spiritual activity. So if someone says like, the body, that's just material, I forget it, I'm just going to chant, I'm going to meditate, I'm totally beyond it. As soon as their like body is getting decrepit, they're going to find it very difficult to meditate. So therefore Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have physical needs. Then you have, what is it next? Safety needs. Then you have emotional needs. Then you have esteem needs. And then there's self-actualization. So we don't believe, like what we say is that they build, like, so if you have those things, you're more likely to be able to spiritually do well. So, yeah, we wreck our bodies actually, and the bodies are a great gift. So yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that. Yeah.
Jai Shri Krishna, Guruji. Actually, we all are discussing the same point, and my question is on the same topic. How do you control your mind and stop overthinking regarding issues about your parents, your loved ones, and you're just continuously overthinking about their issues, and it might stop you doing your normal shows, work-wise, home-wise, and how do you actually even stop overthinking before you even go to sleep? Just switch off your mind for a bit. How do you do that?
Well, there's an intellectual answer, and then there's they say worrying is like paying interest on a loan you haven't taken. See, sometimes they say if there's a worry and you can do something about it, don't worry. If there's a worry and you can't do anything about it, don't worry. This is the whole, like, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Stoic philosophy, right? So you had the Greeks, so you had like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and then after Aristotle, Greek philosophy branched in different ways, Epicurus and people like that, and then one branch was Stoics. So Stoics are like, if you've heard of the names like Seneca, Cicero, Marcus Aurelius, people like that. And their whole philosophy, the Stoics, is that you choose your emotions. Sometimes people think, what can I do? I'm a worrying person. What can I do? I'm angry. It comes over me. Their whole philosophy is that you choose your emotions. In other words, things happen, but you choose how you want to emotionally respond to it. And that determines your inner state of being. So there's some truth to that. Like Krishna says that when we have philosophical understanding, we realize I'm not the doer. We realize that everything in life happens for a reason. And we realize ultimately that there is a divinity, a God, which is moving the world in a certain way. When you realize those three things, you won't worry. Because you'll realize, I've done my best. Whatever happens now is meant to happen. So you don't worry, actually. Therefore, Krishna says in the Gita, the self-realized person, when there is extreme challenge, then they feel no depression or no anxiety, and when there is great success, they feel not too overrelated or anything. They're what we call in Sanskrit astita pragya, which means a sage of the steady mind. Because they realize, I'm not the doer. Everything in life happens for a reason, and everything is moving because of a divine person, God, Krishna, whatever you want to say, and that person is doing it for everyone's good. But when we when we think everything depends on us, when we think, why is it happening like this? When we think, is there a God? Is anyone doing out there? What's happening here? Then we start worrying. So you have to have deep realization that it's okay. Life is moving in a certain way for a certain reason. Keep calm. Chant Hare Krishna. But it's hard, it's hard, right? So sometimes people try to mitigate their worries by making all kinds of material arrangements. Okay, get insurance policy, put an alarm on the thing, make sure there's enough money on the bank, do an overseas bank account So people try to make all kind of material arrangements, get a vaccine, whatever they can do to try to eliminate all the fear, because they're trying to eliminate all the uncertainty so they can control. And what's the net result of it? It all messes up anyway.
Yeah.
Therefore, we tell people peace is not an absence of anxiety. Peace is the presence of divinity in every situation. So if you want to be free of worry, you got to be conscious of divinity, conscious of God, conscious of Krishna. That's basically what it is. That's why they asked Srila Prabhupada, what do you feel when you chant Hare Krishna? It's a good question. He could have answered so many ways. You know what his answer was? I feel no fear. Because he said, when I chant, I'm connected with God. And when I know God's backing me up, we got to be fearful of. You got a top person on your side. But you have to have that realization. It's not cheap. That's why I said it's easy for me to say in here, but you go out there and something happens, it's very difficult. You hear, they're laying people off at work, maybe I'm going to lose my job. Or, you go to the hospital, or they found something, they're calling you in, they found something on the scan. Are you going to, it's hard. But when you know deeply, I'm just, God's in my heart. He's controlling everything. No problem.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Have any questions?
Me?
Yeah.
Let me think, yeah.
Okay, yeah, no worries. I'm just encouraging because some may be more shy. Yeah.
Yeah. I was curious about your view on the Western ideas of manifestation, visualization, etc., and where the crossover between that and spiritual practice is, and if there is a crossover.
Like The Secret, yeah?
Yeah, I haven't read it, but yes, as far as I'm aware, yeah.
Yeah, Secret. So Rhonda Byrne says that if you ask the universe, and if you believe, and then you can receive, that's her 3-step formula in The Secret. I didn't read the whole thing, I just blink. Was it called Blinkist? Blinkist. So The Secret. So what I tell people, spiritual response to The Secret, 3 things. There's truth to The Secret, there's more to The Secret, there's a secret behind The Secret. This is basically our response. So the first response to manifestation, everyone understands manifestation?
Yes.
It's like you wanna be rich. So manifestation says if you're in the right frame of mind, then you can attract all the riches. You can manifest anything you want. There's like a theory in the world today. So the first thing is we say there's truth to this manifestation, the secret. Because everything begins in the mind. So if you focus your mind, if you engage your energy or intention in trying to do something, definitely it has an impact. So the first thing is there's truth. The mind is powerful. However, the second thing we say is there's more to the secret. Because it's not just your mind. Two people may really want to become rich and one does, one doesn't. Why? Because there's another factor called karma. So you can try to manifest something, but if you don't have the karmic credit, you can try as much as you want, it won't come to you. Therefore, the secret doesn't take account of the fact that you're coming into this world with a karmic account. And that karmic account is determining your fortunes to some extent. But then the third thing I say is there's a secret behind the secret. Because Rhonda Byrne thinks the secret is that you can attract anything. But the Bhagavad Gita says the secret is knowing what you should be trying to attract. In other words, even if the secret would be true, it's still not the secret because people are trying to attract the wrong things. Money, power, popularity, position. None of those things are going to make you happy. So the secret behind the secret is knowing what are the things that I should be trying to attract in my life that are actually going to make me happy. And that secret behind the secret is given in spiritual literature, which tells you don't just try and attain what everyone else is trying to attain. Because even if you get it, you might find you're still miserable. So that's what we say to manifestation. There's truth, the mind is powerful. There's more, there's karma, don't forget. There's a power behind your control. And the third thing is, more important than manifestation is figuring out what's the right thing to blinking manifest in the first place. They say the worst type of success is when you achieve all of your goals and then you realize they weren't your goals. There were somebody else's goals, there were society's goals, there were things that you never consciously even chose. So we want to attract the right thing. So that's one way to respond to it.
Thank you.
I didn't just come up with that extemporaneously. I've done a seminar on that before. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I have it's more along the lines of like challenging.
Yeah, challenge. We like it.
Yeah, I was
What?
like Krishna as the person that came down to planet Earth 5,000 years ago. My question is kind of twofold. Like, how do you know that he is God and not some liberated sage, like I don't know, like Jesus Christ, for instance? And then also, how do you know that, let's say he is God, how do you know his message hasn't been changed throughout the 5,000 years?
Great point.
It was initially like an oral thing, and it wasn't written down for a very long time. So yeah.
Yeah, great question. Amazing. So your name? Alexi. Brilliant question. So how do we identify divinity or God? So really speaking, there are two ways generally that are given that allow us to understand when an avatar or a divine descent takes place. The first sign, three things. The first one is scripture. So say for example, the ancient literatures like the Vedas, the Bhagavatam and all these things will basically outline before the time when a divine descent will take place, where that person will come, where they're born, their activities to some extent. So even in the literatures you'll find predictions of Krishna, you'll find even predictions of Buddha, you'll find predictions of even what's going on in the world today. So the scripture can almost pre-predict when a divine descent will take place. So that's the first. The second characteristic is it's said in scripture that whenever a divine descent takes place, there are certain astrological configurations. So there are very, very unique constellations, planetary alignments, and also indications in how that divinity is born and all that kind of stuff. So it's so those are like further signs. And then a further sign of a divine descent is the activities. This divinity, when divinity appears in the world, does things which are like, what can we say, pretty far out, beyond human ability, extraordinary. And that further confirms miraculous things. So that further confirms. So those are kind of like the three broad ways in which we understand this is clearly not a human. This is clearly someone of a different nature. I could say that to someone. I don't know how convincing that would be. Therefore, the only real way to know who is divine, whether Krishna is divine, ultimately the only real way to know is to try to connect with that divinity. Because I could say all of these things, like I've just given you 3 points, but really speaking, when you walk out of the door here, are you going to really be able to do anything with those 3 things to prove Krishna is God? It's kind of like, okay, it makes sense, it's philosophical, but I can't really do anything with that. The only way you're really going to know if Krishna is God or if Allah is God, or in our conception, these are all the same divinity anyway, but is if you try to connect with divinity. And therefore we present Krishna consciousness not so much as a religious faith, but as a spiritual science. There's a hypothesis, there's an experiment, and then there's an observation, there's a conclusion. And it doesn't require any more faith than the amount of faith it requires to be an atheist. Like, I meet atheists and I say, wow, it's incredible the amount of faith you have. Because it requires just as much faith to say there's no God as it does to say there is a God. But at least with spirituality, you have the opportunity to engage in a higher dimensional science which will allow you to perceive that divinity in your own life. So, and that kind of connects to your second point, that how do we know the teachings haven't changed? I could again give you like linguistic points, like the Sanskrit is too complex, you wouldn't be able to imitate it. There are manuscripts from like thousands of years ago that are the same. I could give you many linguistic, historical, anthropological factors, but what you're going to really be able to do with that is kind of be like, okay, well, I'll just have to accept that on faith. The only real way you're going to know whether the Bhagavad Gita is actually a spiritual literature is if you engage with the hypothesis and experiment that it's providing and try to contact divinity. And so it's a spiritual science. And what we tell people is that just as dangerous as blind faith is blind doubt. People say don't have blind faith in religion. I agree. But then also you shouldn't have blind doubt. You gotta... So there was you may have heard his name, William James. He was a famous... he talked a lot about religious experience, American psychologist. So he talked about something called live options. He said there are many options in life, but certain options are what we call live options. And he said for something to be a live option, it has to be practical, it has to be beneficial, and it has to be probable. So for example, if I said to you, you want to be happy? go out into the car park and smash the windscreen of every blue estate car that you see. And you'll be happy. It's an option. But William James would say it's not a live option because it's not practical. Practical means you have to be able to do it without any immediate negative consequence. I mean, you're going to get arrested if you do that. So that doesn't meet that one. It has to be beneficial and logical. Like you have to have seen people in the past do that and become happy. Like I've never seen anyone become happy like that. So it doesn't meet that criteria. And he says it has to be probable. That's that one. People have to have done it before. So it has to be practical, logical, beneficial, and probable. Now if I say to you, engage in the experiment of the Bhagavad Gita, it's practical. You can do it. It's not going to make your life any worse. It's probably going to make you healthier, even on a material level, by following it. You're not going to lose out. Is it beneficial? Is it logical? Well, there's a whole philosophy there. You're a soul. If you nourish the soul, you'll be happy. By calling out to God, you'll be able to establish it makes sense philosophically. And is it probable? Well, people have been reading it for thousands of years and saying that they're deriving spiritual experience from it. So according to William James, that would be a live option. And what he says is that if you deny a live option without any significant exploration, then it denotes that you have an irrational predisposition. In other words, you should try it. And that's what we really tell to the world. We're not telling people you have to believe in this. You have to believe in Krishna. We're saying, here's a hypothesis. You tried everything else out there. And where's it really going? Einstein said, madness means to keep doing the same thing again and again and expect a different result. But that's what people are doing out there. They know material acquisitions, material achievements, material relationships, material arrangements have never made me happy. Yet they keep trying to make new relationships, new achievements, new acquisitions. It's madness. Therefore, we just come into the scene as spiritual disruptors. And we say, we disrupt this. Do something different. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work. The world's going to be waiting for you out there anyway. You can do it all over again if you want to. But what if it does work? What if you contact something that's just so much more profound than what most people are doing in their life? What could be more exciting in life than going on that journey? And that's really our message to the world. So it's a spiritual science. We're not sitting here saying you have to believe in Krishna, you have to believe in the Bhagavad Gita, and when you die you just cross your fingers and hope you did the right thing. We're saying you can experience it now. The Bhagavad Gita equips you with the tools and processes by which you can experience the presence of divinity now. That's the proposition. Okay, sorry, that was a bit of a long monologue. But do you want to respond to that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a problem I have. I remember going to a talk once and someone said, to understand Krishna, you have to use like two parts of your mind, like the intellectual part, but also the emotional part of your being anyway. And I think I tend towards the intellectual part and not the emotional part. And I think what you were saying sort of is like, yeah, you can sort of intellectualize it as much as possible, but you need that.
Yeah, and I think, well, let me challenge you. I think people who even say they're intellectual do have an emotional part. For example, I guess none of you here are married. Okay, you reluctantly put your hand up there. So let me give you an idea, right? Like people get married. logical people get married. How many? Did you do a criminal record check on your wife before you married her?
No.
You're going to spend the rest of your life with this person. You're going to be in the same house as this person. While you're sleeping, this person is going to be there. They could do anything. But you didn't do a criminal record check on them. No one does that. Because there's a certain emotional investment that everyone gives to experience love. So if you sit there and tell me like, well, I'm an intellectual side, I don't have the emotional side, I would be very surprised. If you but the point I'm making is just that all of us have it. Now we have to bring it into this realm, which maybe, that I agree is harder, right? Like it's harder to emotionally give yourself to like a deity, for example, in the same way as if there's, you know, a romantic relationship out there. It's like, it's a little different. But I'm saying you have the capacity. Everyone has the capacity because everyone is looking for love. More than truth, you want love. So even someone who says, I'm intellectual, I'm more intellectually inclined, they desire love even more than truth. Because love is the quality of the soul. To love and be loved. And love doesn't come from the platform of the intellect. So, but yeah, you're right. To perceive divinity, it has to go beyond the intellectual platform. How would you, if you're in a romantic relationship, how from an intellectual platform could you even verify that this is going to work? You can't. You have to just let go at one point. Okay, you can date them for some time and it feels a bit like disingenuous that I'm giving this analogy as though I'm the as though I'm the authority on these matters, but you know, I do have some worldly experience. Yeah, you can date them for some time, get to know them, ask for references, like is this person alright, all that stuff, but you'll never really know whether it's going to, and that's why so many people do all of that stuff, and then they get together with someone, and then you know what happens next. Because you never really know until you enter a relationship. And so people who try to experience divinity simply from the intellectual platform, it's not congruent with how they live the rest of their life. And it won't, it's not the methodology to awaken love. Not in any sphere of life. That's what I would say. Thank you. Nice question. Yeah. Sorry, what's your name?
Kuba.
Kuba.
So I guess kind of leading on through that.
Do you mind if I open the window?
Yeah, that's good.
Is that okay? It's good. It's getting a bit hot after all that romantic talk. Just open this.
So, I guess I see two parts to ISKCON, which is the spiritual science and the religion.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that, yeah, there's a lot of like flexibility almost to questions, but I guess to be answers, but that's not really what I mean. If it is a science, then why does it insist on a personal God when there is, or like on the history of Krishna, like Krishna as a historical figure?
Historical personality, yeah.
Sorry, I can't phrase this. I guess it just seems to be a disconnect between the spiritual science and
right,
the historical.
I understand, yeah.
Like
So the religious side seems more historical, cultural, like to a tradition.
Yeah.
whereas you see spirituality as something more universal, something more kind of not tied to a geography, a historical period, a nation.
Yes, and actually, so as as an example of this is with the mantra. So a lot of people say how powerful the mantra is, but these are people that have been, either they've been raised in a society where from childhood they've been hearing this mantra, or they've been saying this mantra to themselves hundreds of times a day. And if you tell yourself anything...
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly, yes. So a lot of people do mantras that are, I am a great person, I am a nice person.
Affirmations, like...
Affirmations, yeah. And they will start believing it and will work. So I see it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what really makes it different?
Amazing.
And how do you know? Because... So I'll say one thought thing. You talk a lot about the experiment, but... a real scientific experiment has a separation of the scientist and the subject, right? But people are experimenting themselves, so you know what I mean.
Amazing. You got 3 questions in there. That was good. No, that was good. All right, let's go one by one on your 3 questions. So the 3 questions I understood were the first one was like religion and spirituality and culture and geography and how do we differentiate those 2 things. The second question was about the mantra and the self-fulfilling prophecy. And the third one was about spiritual science and how can you objectively experiment on yourself, like be the object and the kind of observer at the same time. I got it, right? Yeah. All right, so the first one is that in one sense, Krishna is a historical personality, but in another sense, Krishna is ahistorical. Krishna appeared in the world 5,000 years ago, but that doesn't mean he was born 5,000 years ago. He's an eternal principle that just appears at certain times, places, and circumstances. So, for example, the sun is not historical. Like, we don't say like, oh, the sun appeared at 6 a.m. this morning. Yes, the sun did appear at 6 a.m., but the sun is always existing. It just appears at different times, places, and circumstances in different ways. So we say Krishna is historical in the sense that his descent was 5,000 years ago. We say Krishna is ahistorical because he appears, he's eternally existing before that, and he appears in different nations, in different ways, to different cultures. So we would say Allah, Jehovah, whatever other, Jah, in Africa they say, are all the same Krishna. In other words, that same Krishna is making himself culturally available in different ways to different people, and he stands above all of those moments in history. And in that sense, Krishna or Krishna consciousness is something which goes beyond the sectarian, geographical, nationalistic religion. It's an eternal principle which is manifested at certain times in certain ways. I'll go through the 3 answers and then you can respond to me if you... So on your second point, the mantra is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, if we were to launch that accusation, we could launch that accusation against anything in life. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you go to Costa and you get a coffee in the morning, you're somehow going to be more relaxed for the day, and that's why everyone does it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you achieve this in the world, that that you're somehow going to be better, you're going to be happier. In other words, we could say everything in life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because, do you see what I'm saying? Because then the mind is the measure of everything. So, how would you know anything about anything?
So I guess I would say, how is it different to a different affirmation? Or a man?
Oh, okay, yes. So, and then that's where I would come on to the third point. So then what's so special about the Hare Krishna mantra? And how is it objective if it's just yourself that is experiencing it? It's not just me that's experiencing it, but you as an external observer will be able to see the effect of the mantra in me. Say, for example, I'm going to be the spiritual scientist now. I'm going to start chanting Hare Krishna. And the hypothesis is that if I do that, I'll find God. Right? That's the hypothesis. So I'm doing it. I'm sitting here and I'm saying, I found God, everyone. And you guys are all sitting there like, how do we know? But what the scriptures say is that it won't just be my experience. You will be able to observe certain things in me as an external observer which show you that I have elevated consciousness. I'll be happier. I'll have better character. I'll have more resilience. My desires will change. My personality will change. In other words, there will be clearly observable phenomena by which you can understand I have undergone a transformation in my life. And that transformation is the type of transformation that will be very hard to create by a material endeavor. And in that way, you'll be able to see, but obviously that's not in and of itself going to convince you. But what we are saying is that when someone has spiritual consciousness, there are clearly objective external factors which will indicate that this person is on a higher level of consciousness. And that higher level of consciousness wouldn't be able to be triggered by anything within of material methodology.
But the things you listed as
the objective figures,
are all objective figures which
character,
can be achieved. Character, resilience of this, they can reasonably be achieved
by self-development, for example.
Yes.
Not on the level of spirituality, though. Like self-development, we would say, can only bring you to a certain level of happiness or a certain level of character change. The level of character change and happiness that spirituality can bring you to is much more profound. Now you're saying, how can anyone see that? To some extent they can't. Yeah, you're right. But they can definitely see there's a change. It's had a change. The full effect of the spiritual experiment can only be perceived by yourself. But again, I don't think you can make a case that science is somehow more objective than that. Because in other ways, science will require just as much faith and belief. I don't see, like, if you can provide me with something of existential understanding that science can prove that's beyond doubt and that has no subjectivity or faith required, I'd be interested to hear it. Because my sense is that you can't. Everything in life is going to require some level of faith. Like even Aristotle talks about this. Like he talks about if you want to prove something, then at one point you have to accept something to be true which has no proof of it. Like say for example, if I make a proposition, water boils at 100 degrees. So I set up a Bunsen burner, a beaker, put water in it, put a thermometer, boom, 100 degrees, it's boiling. I've proved it. Someone could come along and say, but how do I know that's mercury inside the thermometer? All right, let's do another experiment to test the mercury. And in the process of that experiment, I'm going to say, well, what about that? Let's do another one. He said you'll go into an infinite regress. And therefore, at one point, you have to accept something as an axiomatic truth. An axiomatic truth basically means something that you haven't proved, but you accept it in the beginning in order to advance the experiment, which later on you then come back to and verify it. So we say spirituality is the same. You begin with some faith, you practice it, and then you come back and verify it. And that is not dissimilar to the scientific method, because that's what they do in the world all the time. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to understand anything about anything. because you have to begin from a starting point, a self-evident truth. So I think your points are well taken. All I'm trying to establish here is that what we're doing here requires no extra faith than what people are doing out there. And I think that's a point that we have to establish, because people draw like an aggressive demarcation between science and spirituality, that one is somehow objective and the other one is subjective. And my proposition to you is that both of them require faith.
That's a good answer. Back to the first thing about the culture. So, again, you say that Krishna manifests himself
in different places,
in different cultures as different religions, Allah and God and so on. But in that case, you would have to say that, well, the history of it is, one whim is correct. Was Jesus the Son of God 2,000 years ago, or
like there are different perceptions of Jesus?
So there's all these historical. Each religion has its own historical kind of thing. So you seem to suggest that the history is either they all happened, which sounds a bit strange to me, literally, or actually it's almost like a metaphor, a story, rather than a real historical event. And that seems to go against what ISKCON teaches, which is very literal.
Yeah, no, great question. No, we would say it is all historical. Like, we can, according to the Vedic literature, we can give you a timeline of everything that happened in the last 5,000 years. That includes world religions. Like, we can share with you 3000 BC, Krishna appears, Krishna disappears. Gradually there's a degradation. 500 BC, Buddha appears. Buddhism comes about. Obviously, 0, Christ appears. Christ is crucified. 700 AD, Muhammad comes about. Islam spreads like wildfire. 1500s, there's a renaissance. They discover the new world. Christianity spreads. And that's basically the religious landscape we live in now. So and I missed out Judaism. Judaism is 2,500, Abraham, right, in Israel. So we have no problem. Like, we can see that there's every religion has a historical period within which it appeared. We believe that all of those religions, if they're practiced with sincerity and with purity, they lead to divine revelation. What we would say is that different religions have different levels of knowledge. So some are more complex theological systems and some are less complex. And we would say that the differences in their understandings of each other or understandings of history are more man-made than, like, who writes history, right? What to speak of religions, there's debates about the historical record of so many things in the world, right? Because different people write history, right? And then different people come up with a narrative of what history is. So differences in historical documentation of religion is not exclusive to religion. Differences in historical, documentation of anything in this world is there, because people write history. But yeah, we have no problem. Like, that's why we can go out into the world and we're like, you're a Christian? That's amazing. Do it. But do it with more purity and you'll get more love. Like, we have no problem with that.
So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Would you say that Jesus was the Son of God? You would agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, he's the prophet. He's a prophet.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Therefore, now how the Christians interpret the book of John and the truth, the way and the light, and you can only reach the Father except through me, and how they understand those kind of statements, we may have a different perspective on that. That's what we call hermeneutics or exegesis. Like, how do you understand a spiritual statement? But we have no problems with the Gospels. We have no problems with biblical traditions. We have, I mean, it sounds crazy to say we have no problems with Jesus. Of course we don't. Like, it's Jesus.
I don't mean problems.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm just saying my language.
They are like real historical events. Kind of thing.
Yeah, but my point would just be that I think, like, for example, if you, for example, look at what do people say about the history of civilization? Take that one, right? Okay, so there were many ancient civilizations: Mesopotamia, Aztecs, Indus Valley, all of these kind. If you, depending on where you go in the world, they'll tell you different things about historically when these civilizations came and what their datings were and all of that, because people have objectives to achieve, and therefore whenever anyone documents history, there is a certain amount of personal agenda, and that's why we find differences. And so, like, even when you're in the academic world, like, you see it all the time. Like, we'll talk about one thing and read 5 books, and they'll say very different things, because everyone has a specific point that they're trying to ultimately bring you to. Sorry. Good questions, thank you. It's 12:15. I don't know how long we're going.
Whatever works for you.
No, but you guys got a schedule, right? What's next?
Nothing till lunch.
Oh, nothing till lunch. As you like, guys. If you have any questions, I'm here. I've got another 10 minutes. I need to go for a program.
Yeah, it's just one thing about, like, astrology. So nowadays, kind of became really popular in India. So most of the people believe in astrology, and then they're more connected because things are getting real. So what they say, it happens, and then started to believe in that. So one downside of that is, like, I don't completely blindly believe that. So the thing is, like, I heard a few questions like, okay, if astrology says that you get married at this time, you get this kind of job, you will be like this, and you will die at this age, things like that. And why to do spirituality, or why to do what you have to do?
So it's all designed.
Yeah.
So think of astrology like an MRI.
Right.
You know MRI? Yeah. So basically, if you do an MRI of your body, then it will basically tell you the state of certain things, and it will probably be able to predict certain things that are going to happen to you. For example, if you get an MRI done and you've got a tumor, then it can probably predict, what's going to happen in 5 years' time. So therefore, astrology is just like a cosmic MRI. It's not determining anything, it's not pushing your future, it's basically just telling you what karmic configuration you have and what might then happen in your life as a result. However, once you've done an MRI, if you find out you have a disease, you can do treatment, right? And will that change the future? It will, right?
Yeah.
In other words, the MRI tells you the state of the play, but it doesn't mean things can't change by your endeavor. Therefore, karma is like that. Karma can always change. Karma can transform. Karma is like a dynamic thing. It's not like set in stone. This is, like someone may say, like, my karma says I won't die until I'm 75. Therefore, I'm just going to go onto the M1 and just stand there. Because anyway, according to karma, I'm not going to die till I'm 75. And karma is an infallible law. Oh, my friend. Ain't going to work, my friend. It's dynamic.
Yeah.
At every moment, you're creating your own destiny. You're designing your destiny. Therefore, karma is, so yes, karma is giving you the stage for where you're acting now, but according to how you act now, that your karma will continue evolving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, really.
So life is an interplay of karma and free will. Both things are going on. It's not one or the other. People who think it's free will are like The Secret, Rhonda Byrne. Nah, nothing, so I can manifest whatever I want. No, that's extreme. And then there are other people, no, everything is predetermined, you don't have any free will, it's going to happen, you're just a robot, you're a cog in the machine. No, that's extreme. You're functioning within a certain stage, according to karma, but you have free will on that stage. Now decide what you want to do.
That makes sense.
Yeah?
This is actually the thing I've struggled most with Krishna consciousness since coming into it, and it's the relationship between men and women, and how women are viewed in Krishna consciousness, and yeah, it's so, like, you know, there's some things that Prabhupada say that, like, I find so, like...
difficult to digest, yeah.
difficult to digest, and yeah, I was wondering if you could speak a bit on, like...
Yeah. No, thank you for raising that, yeah. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada in his book, sometimes he makes statements which, may not sit well with us. And so, for example, on this point of women, sometimes he may quote statements talking about how women are less intelligent. He may quote statements about how women have more material desires. And how do we understand those? And how do we respond to those in such a way that it doesn't discourage or lead to any exploitation or looking down upon anyone? The first thing is, I would say, whenever you read Prabhupada's books, it's absolutely essential that you also understand Prabhupada as a person. It's important to understand the author along with his words. So here is Srila Prabhupada saying women are less intelligent, but the same Srila Prabhupada gave his women disciples positions of responsibility. He made them leaders. He asked his lady disciples to give talks even while he was sitting there. So immediately we understand that there's something more to that statement. He's not just saying women are like good for nothing and they can't. I mean, here he was empowering them in a very gracious way. So again, this comes to what we call hermeneutics, or how you understand the statements of a scripture or the statements of a saintly person. So let's take that statement. Prabhupada says women are less intelligent. What does that mean? Nowadays we go out there, women have PhDs, they're sometimes university lecturers, they're sometimes smarter than men in many ways. In fact, it's said in the world now that men are like underachieving way more than women. Like they're striving at thriving. So what does that mean, that women are less intelligent? So there could be a few ways to understand this. The first thing is that there are different types of intelligence. There's emotional intelligence and there's analytical intelligence. And generally, and even science will confirm this, men have generally more analytical intelligence and women generally have more emotional intelligence. That's why if you go into a school today, you'll find that the primary school teachers are usually women. And you'll find generally that the older teachers are men. Because in the beginning, more emotional intelligence is required. Later on, more analytical intelligence is required. So when Prabhupada says that women are less intelligent, he's talking about in the context of philosophical rigor. That generally the male intelligence has an advantage when it comes to understanding points of philosophy, not because they're better, just because their physical frame means that they have a more analytical side to them. So that's the first point. The second point is that Srila Prabhupada makes the point that there are exceptions. So, yes, we can say, make a statement, but then there are always exceptions, and he always left room for that. So there's not a blanket statement that all women are less analytically intelligent. There may be exceptions to that. But as a general rule, that's what we say. And the third point is that Prabhupada also makes the point elsewhere in his teachings that as soon as one rises to the spiritual platform, they go beyond bodily limitation. And therefore he would often say the ladies who have taken up to spirituality have transcended the limitations of their body, because they're identifying as a soul, and therefore they shouldn't be regarded as less intelligent, because now they're functioning on a higher conscious level than that. Does that make sense? And in that way, ladies are also beyond such demarcation. So the point I'm making is that when Prabhupada makes a statement, it's good to understand the culture from which he's coming. It's good to understand what else did he do in his life in relation to this statement. It's good to also understand what could this statement mean in the broader context. Like, let me try to contextualize this statement. And so like this, then we get a broader picture. Like, okay, maybe it's not so, like, maybe he's not just a misogynist, you know. Maybe there's something to this. And so it requires a little bit of patience, but to understand in a wholesome way like this can make it easier. But thanks for raising that. Yeah, I think many people feel that. I think we've felt that. I've also felt that. And this is how I've been able to understand it. Thank you, everyone. Great to connect with you, and thanks for being so patient. And well, you're here for a few more days still, so we'll connect, and wishing you the best. Thank you.